Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Ship and Read. Today I'll be doing my June wrap up. June honestly was not the best month for me, but I did end up reading quite a number of books, but that's because I dived right into manga, and that helped tip the quantity of the books that I read as well as the quality, to be honest. But in terms of like full-length novels, I did not do much reading this month. So for June I read a total of 16 books, and that meant I read 4,361 pages. You can definitely tell that there is a dip in the number of pages, especially since mangas are less than 200 pages each. But out of those 16 books, I read 4 books that were 3 stars, 1 book that was 3.5 stars, 1 book that was 4 stars, 1 book that was 4.5 stars, and then I read 9 5-star reads. So as you can probably guess, the 9 books that I gave 5 stars were for Bleach. I read volumes 2 to 10, so I read a lot there. I mean, it was just a month where I just sat there and was just reading the ebooks of it, and it was just a really good time. I felt like manga was probably the best way for me for reading at that time, or right now honestly. Like, I'm still reading manga just because I have such a weird reading slump. Like, I'm still listening to audiobooks, but I just can't physically get into books right now, like reading it physically, and somehow manga is just like easy for me to go through right now, so that's what I'm doing. But I gave them all 5 stars. I love Bleach. I cannot wait for the new anime to come out for it, because it is the last arc, the final arc of the entire series, and so it's been a long time coming, and so I've been just reliving Bleach all over again this past year. I rewatched the anime, and now I am reading the manga. I read the manga like years ago, but I didn't finish it. I think I only got to a few volumes, I'm not really sure. So now I'm just starting from the beginning and just finishing off the entire series this year. That's kind of my goal. But obviously 5 stars. Love everyone, love all the dynamics, the relationships. Like, it is such a good time. Then the next book that I picked up is Darius the Great Deserves Better, which I gave 4.5 stars. This was such a good read. I feel like his writing honestly is just so like fluid. I love how it flows, and I love the characters, I love the dynamics, I love his interactions with everyone, and how he's just learning to be more of himself and learning who he is, and just being able to just, I don't know, like form these really close bonds with his peers. I just loved everything about this book. I love how it delved more into Sorab, his friend that he made from the first book, and it just continues with everything that happened from the first book. I just love everything about this book. It's just such a, like, I feel like it's one of those like very heartwarming novels where you're just smiling and you're just having a really good time, despite there are some incidences in this book where it kind of dives into more serious topics. But I feel like the overall theme is a very like happy, very uplifting type of novel, and I was just really here for this. So the next 2 books I picked up is Stalking Jack the Ripper and Hunting Prince Dracula. I gave both of these 3 stars. I did do a dedicated reading vlog, which I will link above and down below in case you want to check that out. At this point they should be out already. I just did a reading vlog on this, and since it's out already, I can just say that I ended up DNFing the series after these 2 books because they're not bad, but they weren't amazing. Like I said, I gave both of them 3 stars. They were just okay read. I just felt very disconnected with the story. I didn't care a lot about the characters, and overall I was just kind of disappointed in general, just because I feel like I had really high expectations going into it, because everyone I know had raved about the series and just really adored it. And for me, I feel like partially it is my reading slump. So if you have read it and you still feel like I might enjoy it, let me know down below. Maybe I'll like give it another shot when I am back to reading normally again. But for whatever reason, I just couldn't get into it. I felt like I liked the characters, but I wasn't super invested. I thought the plots were interesting, but I lost focus very easily. I was listening to both on audiobook, and I normally don't have any issues with thrillers. And this is also historical, so it's not like I'm learning a new world. There's no fantasy element to it at all. So it's like, I'm not entirely sure like why I was losing focus, but I was. And it's not like reading physically would have changed, because I did read Stalking Jack the Ripper physically before I jumped into the audiobook version, because I wasn't reading it fast enough. So I don't know, like both versions right now, like audio and physical, just was not working for me for this series. So unfortunately I ended up just just DNFing the rest of the series, but the first 2 books I read, I gave them both 3 stars. They were just okay. Then the next book I picked up is Agnes at the End of the World by Kelly McWilliams. This book I gave 4 stars. This was honestly such a surprising read for me because I don't think I've heard too much about this book, like from anyone, and I got this book from the publishers like a while ago. This is like back in 2020, so it's just been sitting on my shelf. So honestly, this book was just really good. I really love the cult aspect to it. Like, I did not expect myself to love this book as much as I did. It obviously delved a lot with religion, as most cults do. I feel like all the cults have something to do with like diehard like religious fanatics, and this book was just like that, where the cult leader is just insane. All the adults were also equally insane, and they're just doing so many crazy things that you're just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, what is going on inside their heads? Like, there's just so much about this book that I was just like, I'm confused, but in a really good way, because Agnes herself was just like, I felt so invested with the story. I couldn't put this book down when I listened to an audiobook. Like, I just had to know what was happening. Not only is there a whole cult situation, but the world is actually at the end, because there's this whole like virus going on, and people are turning into these like red things. I forget what they're called exactly, but it's just kind of crazy. And so she's just kind of like navigating her cult, as well as the fact that the world is in fact ending, and what that exactly means for her and her brother. I just thought this book was really well done. I love the characters, I love the writing, I love the plot, and just how invested I was with everything. So if you're looking for like a really intense cult book, this is it, guys. Like, I don't really have much else to say about this book. I didn't give this book quite a 5-star read, and I'm not entirely sure why exactly. I just feel like it wasn't up there, but it was a really freaking good book. Then this next book I picked up is Shatter the Sky by Rebecca Kim Wells. This book I gave 3 stars. In retrospect, now that I think about it, I probably should not have picked this up as an audiobook, because that is what I did. And I think that's also why I just was not super invested. But like I said already, because I was in such a weird reading slump, I couldn't digest anything physically, so I think that's why I decided to pick up an audiobook. But this is a fantasy. Like, I really should not have picked this up as an audiobook, because it was not well, but I didn't DNF it, which is what I've been doing for the other fantasy books I've picked up. So at least there's that. But the truth is, it's been a while since I read this or listened to this book, and I don't even really recall everything that happened in here, which just makes it even worse for me, because it's like, it's a 3-star read. I literally can't recall anything. Like, that's just how uninteresting and like not invested I was with this book overall. I probably should just put like 2 stars, to be honest, because I can't even recall like much of the details, except for the fact that it's about dragons, and she goes off to save her girlfriend, and there's this whole like adventure kind of going on, but that's the gist of it, and I don't recall any of the specific details, so that's saying something. Then this next book I picked up is She Gets the Girl. This book I gave 3 stars. This was also an okay read. I was really happy to pick up this book because this is a contemporary romance, and since, like I said, I'm in this weird reading slump, romances, contemporaries, thrillers are usually the ones I can, you know, gear towards. They don't require too much thinking on my end, whereas for fantasies and sci-fi, I have to think a lot more about like the world and the new magic systems usually. Just like everything is just a lot more complex and complicated, so that's why I've been kind of gearing towards these genres. But the thing is, for this one, it was just an okay read. I didn't care too much about the characters. I feel like people really adored this book. I thought it was just okay. I thought the romance was nothing too intense. It was pretty obvious from the get-go like how this book was going to end and how the romance was going to develop. So for me, it was more like the journey of getting there and like how cute the moments were. And while there were some cute moments, it wasn't any that I was like, oh my god, this is so adorable, like I'm swooning here, or like I'm feeling a lot of angst. Like, none of that. And I feel like for me, romances, I really need that like extra factor, and this book didn't have that for me to feel all the emotions. So that's why I give this book 3 stars. It was just an okay romance novel. Then the last and final book that I picked up is Neon Gods by Katie Robert. This book I gave 3.5 stars. I surprisingly enjoyed this book more than I expected. I didn't love this book as much as I thought I would as well, because a lot of people have read this book and adored it. Like, they're like 5-star read, amazing, super smutty. I don't know, it's just because I had a lot of expectations on the smut, but this did not have as much smut as I had expected. There's smut, don't get me wrong. I just felt like it was not like so smutty that I was like, you know, like what's that like emoji where it's just like the sweating emoji, you know what I mean? Like, that didn't get up to that level. Like, there was a few incidences where I was like, oh, but that was kind of it. I think there's probably like a couple scenes here and there, and the rest is just like plot. But I don't know, for some reason I just expected like constant like banging going on and a lot of sex scenes and just crazy wild factors. But it was kind of tame, to be honest, from like what I had expected and what I've heard from other people. I guess I just wanted more. I'm not really sure. But I am going to pick up the next book though and see like how that fares and if it gets steamier, because I feel like for me an actually steamy smutty book is where they're like really going at it for most of the content is about that. Whereas for this book, it's mostly about the retelling, which I mean I love. Like, this is why I also really enjoyed this book, because it is a retelling of Hades and Persephone. But I really loved how the author portrayed this retelling and how, you know, the world that she created with the upper city and like the downtown city, and just the vastly differences that they have in terms of the people there, the gods presiding over it, especially just like Hades presiding on the lower half, and just like how he treats his citizens. And I don't know, I just really loved how the author, you know, spun this retelling and made it completely unique for this situation. And of course the smut scenes. So I definitely want to continue on the series, especially as someone who loves retelling like from Greek mythology. Definitely can't wait to see what the next retelling is. I don't even know what the next retelling is. I hope that there is a retelling now that I think about it. But either way though, I'm definitely interested in continuing on with the series and just see for myself. I'm really curious to find out like if this book will be better or if the next 2 books will be better. I think there's only 3 books out right now from what I recall. I'm definitely happy that I read this book. I think I just had some higher expectations on like the smutty factor, and it didn't really deliver at that level. So we'll see how it goes for the next books. But anyways, that's all to say for this video. Let me know down below what you read for June and what your thoughts are if you have read any of these books that I mentioned today. Let me know down below as well if you want me to continue on with the Stalking Jack the Ripper series. But as always, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. It really does help out my channel. And if you'd like to see more content of me, please don't hesitate to subscribe down below, as well as hit the notification bell. And as always, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!